Okay, so a couple of things before you start in on the white charcoal. Number one, between black charcoal and white charcoal, you need to spray with workable fixative. And so for some of you, if you're trying to darken your darks and the charcoal's just not staying, we can spray workable fixative, and then you can go back and add more. We can spray it again. You can spray it multiple times before you add the white. So white charcoal step 2, and that'd be once all of your black is finished, refined, perfected, cleaned up, ready to go. All right, so you're gonna apply the white charcoal and blend. You could, if it's a large area, use your finger. The white charcoal doesn't smudge as bad, so you might end up just using your blender for white charcoal, and that's okay. So the paper should show through between the white and black charcoal, unless you're like me. Like for this area, it's straight up white touching black, obviously. But in this area, there's area to fade to have the paper show like right here. Sorry, the camera slightly delayed. All right. So you want to make sure you spray workable fixative on the charcoal to prevent smudges. So you're going to go outside. So after your first layer of white, after you've refined it, kind of cleaned it up, we're going to spray fixative again. So after blending and spraying, you'll need to add another layer. So white you have to build up. So another layer to the white charcoal. You're not going to spray after the last layer. The last layer is just going to sit there. We're just not going to touch it. We're just going to let it be. And that's like you're going to go back and brighten your highlights. And if it's a really, really light valued area, you would add another layer. The reason being the workable fixative kind of dulls down the white, and you have to then kind of bring it back. So you're going to refine your values, make sure you have clean edges, and all 5 parts of light. You have shadows, highlights, midtones. If there's a cast shadow, like on the objects in the pair, those have cast shadows that you need to deal with. Okay. So then I would squint my eyes and make them fuzzy and see where the lightest white parts are. I'm going to do this one for you guys. It kind of fades, like it's hard to see in this picture, but it's fading out a little bit here. So I know like I'm going to start fading out like here, so I have room for like that value there, slightly gray. I would start with the white charcoal chunk, especially if it's in a little bit of a bigger area like what I'm working with. But of course, if it's a small area, just use the charcoal pencil. Actually, I'm going to get my charcoal pencil ready and probably my medium blender. Okay. All right, so I'm going to add where it's the brightest, which is in here, circular motion. So the white charcoal is less forgiving, meaning if you lay it on there really sloppy, the blender is not going to magically fix it. All right, so up here it's starting to fade out. So I'm going to lessen my pressure, or I could go back and do that with charcoal pencil. It kind of depends on how comfortable you are. Okay, so I'm going to come down a little bit more. Okay, so white you definitely have to work in layers, layers, layers. And so the first, I'm just going to use a blender. First layer I'm going to blend, kind of fade out, making sure I'm not touching, like here it's needing to fade, and I'm going to have to use my kneaded eraser to lift out some of that. And then in the second layer is usually when I would use the charcoal pencil, because then I can start getting my edges really good and building up my layers. So you have to work that first layer, work it into the paper. Then I'm going to come back and add another layer where it's the brightest. So the charcoal pencils are slightly smudgier, just so you know. Look at my own. Okay. All right, so I am going to use my blender, but I'm still trying not to like get too close to the black. I'll just let the blender go the rest of the way. Circular motion, and it starts fading down. Okay, so before I blend, I'm going to lift out, kind of fade out with my blender so that these two areas don't really touch. So once you blend it, notice how it's like not as bright. Okay, so I need less white charcoal on my blender than that. So I'm gonna just, in my border, like clean off my blender by twisting it and clean it off. You can do this with black charcoal too. That way there's like really hardly anything on my blender along that edge. So it has the paper kind of showing through. Okay. So this is the part that we would spray, and then I'm hoping that like this area, let me fade that down a little bit more. I'm hoping like this area will be just fine. This area I would leave alone. Obviously I'd finish this part before spraying. But then this part that's super bright white in my image, like straight up white here, then I'm just going to put another layer on it and blend it out, and we're not gonna spray it, not gonna touch it. So you have to like work your first layer in, do another layer, blend, fix, spray, come back and do another layer to your lightest values. So a slightly different way with the white charcoal than the black charcoal. And then before spraying, I would go back, actually there's a little bit more of a shape to this. I would go back and kind of clean up areas where it's supposed to be just the paper before spraying. Like clean up areas. All right, you guys, there's your white charcoal. Trying to get this thing done by Monday. Let me know if you're ready for spraying.